Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, we come and we discuss life issues, no matter what they might be. As we sit at the table with each generation, we all learn, we all grow, we all are inspired.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Generationally Speaking.
I think it's so good that you started this nonprofit, and I think there's education that has to be done in the community of brown and black folk when it comes to mental health. I was attending a church service, and the preacher was talking, and he made a statement, and the statement he made, it smacked me, and I shook my head like, what now? And he said he was making an example of a person who was acting out, and he said, and you acting out with your bipolar self. And I thought to myself, my goodness, when did that become an example of something that's normal? That when you say bipolar, you don't understand the significance of what you're saying and the way and what you are attaching to this person who may have this diagnosis, that you make fun of it. You write it off as if it's nothing when it's very serious. And so how are you going about to educate folk in our community, in our churches, in the schools, or how are you going about re-educating folk to let them know that mental health is just like high blood pressure? It's just like a diagnosis of being a diabetic. It's like a diagnosis of having a lung issue, a lung problem, breathing. How do you go about helping our community and folk around us to say, hey, this is a medical issue and it's nothing to be ashamed of?
We actually just had this past weekend, April 15th, we hosted a mental health community engagement event where we talked about mental health. And it's unfortunately, we had about 10, 12 participants, you know, in an auditorium that seated 120 people.
Right.
But we decided to, you know what, sometimes you got to go to them, you got to meet people where they are. So we did do a live streaming of it on social media, because our goal is to educate you and we want to bring awareness, because it's like you say, you got to be able to break the stigma. And by providing literacy to let people know, when you say stuff like that, oh, you're acting bipolar. Oh, this weather is bipolar. Oh, he's schizophrenic. No, he suffers from a schizophrenia, a mental health disorder. He's not his disorder. He's a
Right.
person. She's a person. Find another way to say the weather. The weather's not bipolar. This weather is bizarre. The weather we're having is weird. Or when we say, "Oh my God, I don't know why I'm so OCD." You don't have a obsessive compulsive disorder. You don't know what that means when you say that for someone who's actually struggling with that every day. And my daughter did in the workshop part of it, what we did on Saturday, she actually showed, when you go to social media, the number of tweets that are made towards mental health, and people don't even recognize whether it's OCD, whether they're doing it for schizophrenia, bipolar. And it was one of those, the mental health disorders were in the highest level. You don't hear people talk about diabetes. You don't hear people make jokes about somebody having heart disease. You don't have people make jokes about someone having cancer. You don't hear that. So the mental health has become the elephant in the room. We don't talk about it. When I was growing up, we had people in our neighborhood who suffered with mental health disorders, and oh, he just crazy. And they would say it in the most derogatory.
Yes.
And as kids, you're laughing because you don't know better.
Yeah.
So you don't realize your words hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Your words hurt. Oh, my grandmother, she had dementia. Well, she's senile. It's the context. So that's why literacy and education is important. And it wasn't until our family started to get literacy and education that we started to understand what Quintus was going through.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't understand. I had one therapist say to me, Ms. Billups, when you hear something, you hear direct communication. It goes from me to you. But when Quintus hears it, it goes down, it goes around, it comes back up. So by the time it actually gets to his sensory, he's lost already another 10% of what the 85% they say we don't get anyway. You know what I'm saying? So he's even shortened, less than that. So he doesn't receive information the way you receive information. It's not that he's ignoring you. It's not that he's not trying. His sensories are not the same. So we have to be able to have a level of sensitivity. So we do focus on the literacy part. We do Zoom meetings as well to try to bring people in forums to have that platform. I'm also a part of we have this thing in DeKalb County. It's called DeKalb County Mental Health Roundtable. It was actually launched in 2017 by the CEO of DeKalb and Michael Thurman. He pretty much was an initiative that was set on behalf of Quintus's death as a result of Quintus's death, where you have a group of police officers, therapists, community-based agencies that come together to discuss what can we do, because it doesn't rest on one area. It doesn't just rest on the family. It doesn't just rest on the police department. It doesn't rest just on the community-based agencies. It doesn't just rest on the politicians, because we all got to be in alignment, because we have people who are suffering every day, who are suffering in silence, who don't have a voice. And that's what faith wants to be, an advocacy. We want to be that voice. You're not drowning in your own darkness. I was in my darkness. I didn't have no one to talk to. I do have a blog. It's Gebray's blog. I have a blog that at one time I blogged heavily. I would go in and I would talk about my feelings and my emotions, and I would share a lot of my poetry, because that's another thing. That was an outlet for me. I would write, and I would say the things that people want to say, but they don't say it. And you try to get them to go. But Gebray's Corner is what we go. I'm sitting there and I'm having my moments, and I constantly encourage people, go out there, tell me what you want to talk about. We don't proclaim to be therapists, because I'm not. My daughter, she is, but I'm not. That's not what I do. But at the same time, if you want someone that's going to listen to you, who's not going to judge you, that's what we're here for, because it takes a village, and there is strength in numbers. And the more education and knowledge we have about mental health, the more powerful we are. But we got to be able to break the silence. And the silence that needs to be broken is when we talk about it, let's make it a domino effect. Our motto is each one reach one. So if I reach you today, Reverend Smith, and you reach somebody else, to me, I've done my job. That to me, that is a domino effect that eventually is going to take over. And we take that on to say, am I my brother's keeper? Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about the roundtable discussion that you had and with the police officers involved. What is the change that will occur or is recommended to occur for police officers when they encounter individuals like your son? And there are many that occur every day, and we don't really fully understand that this was a mental health issue that was met in another kind of way. So did they talk about, what can police officers do and the community to improve this interaction when it occurs? And we know that firepower is there, but what else can they bring to the scene before they go down to a shootout?
It's interesting because we have a representative. I'm not sure you're familiar with the National Alliance of Mental Illness.
I've heard it, yeah.
Okay. They've joined our roundtable, and right now we're trying to bring it back home, because you have people. Every group has something that they want to take away, right, or get out of it. And there is an infighting right now that's going on. And unfortunately, the roundtable was designed to be able to build relationships, identify the relationships, not beyond the community, but the community base, the churches, right, to unify. But you can't do that until you remove yourself. Okay. And that's hard. And I'm just saying that's really hard. And I'm not talking about the police, but that's hard because it's a control, you know, and having that sense of where I'm in control, we also have to be able to recognize when we do things wrong. And my son's situation, and I'm biased, I'll say that. I think that it really boiled down to standard operations procedures not being followed. Because they take crisis intervention training. I've actually been a speaker for those trainings where I talk about lived experiences. And in that class, which is a very great class, it talks about de-escalation. What do you do when you come on scene? How do you recognize a person that's going through a mental health crisis? But when officers or any organization, regardless what your job is, and I'm going to say you as a minister, right? If you become compassion fatigued in your love for your, for what God has told you to do, you're not going to deliver what God wants you to do. Because at that point, we start to put ourselves before the mission. They have to be able to put the mission before themselves. So at the height of my son's interaction with police, I was constantly reminded of what he said to her, what he said to the officer. So you're dealing with a person who's in a mental psychosis, and they're calling you out of your name. I can imagine that has to be hard. That's disrespectful. But is that the behavior of a person that's in their right state of mind? I've been trained to be able to assess that. And unfortunately, in that instance, I'm finding that, until officers can truly embrace that training, it's a great training. If you haven't sat in one, it is amazing what they do for them. But they're people, they're human.
Right.
I mean, they're human. And the reality of it is until they have to be able to care about the mission. They have to, and human compassion is important. When we lose that for people, no matter what our jobs are, things are going to break.
I'm not a police officer, and so I don't have any idea of what their emotions and what they're experiencing, but the training of, okay, so this person is calling me out of my name. The training that you would think that should go into understanding that because of the nature of the assignment that you have, that you're going to get people who are going to curse at you, that you're going to get people who are going to say every manner of evilness to you. But you would think that there would be some training for, a thicker skin, or being able to say, okay, to some degree, this especially for your son, when he wasn't making any sense in his conversation. I mean, so you say to yourself, something is triggering, not triggering accurately for him. Can we call on board somebody who is able to help? And maybe the issue was the gun that he had. Maybe that was it, that fear. I don't know, but I know in America, we have a problem between our police officers and mental health citizens when they interact. There's a problem. And there's a problem when that person is a person of color. There's a problem. And I'm not sure how we go about, and I guess doing it what you're doing step by step of resolving that. I know that God has an answer for us. And I know he calls us, and he's called you for such a time as this. But I do believe that you got it, for your organization, you have to keep pushing, for a deeper understanding of persons who have mental illnesses, and when those moments when they are in full psychosis, what it really means.
Yes, and if you don't understand, if you've never seen a person in one, it's and most of the time, When Quinn was first killed, there were articles being posted, and people were making comments under those articles. And when it's someone you love, when it hits home, that's the best way I can say. You never understand it till it comes to your doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pray, even to the people who made those comments, that it never comes to your doorstep. And that's the reason why, again, faith is here. If we can be a lighthouse in any way to prevent it from coming to your doorstep, mm-hmm. then we want to be that lantern that sits on your doorstep.
So what are the next steps for your organization as you all move forward? Are you going to continue to have these roundtable discussions? Are you going to be able to perhaps go into the high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools? Are you able to go into the churches even and make some type of presentation about mental illness?
I have been in the process of, I've met multiple people. It's amazing the number has put before me. I've met them, and we've been in conversation about coming in and sharing my story. I don't have a problem sharing my story, but my story was on the website, and I took it down because God told me everybody is not entitled to that story. So I continue to try to identify partners and identify people who give me the opportunity. And that's why I'm so thankful for you today, for allowing us the opportunity to just get the word out about, not necessarily about my story, about what we're trying to do with the organization, because it's so needed. Yes. It is needed. So if God opens a door, I told him I'm going to walk through it.
Yes.
If he opens a window, I'm going to crawl through it. If he lets the window just a little out the ground, I stay in the gym so I can slide through it. So at this point, I'm pressing for it, and I just ask God to lead me, and wherever the journey takes me, I'll be there. And even when it's dark, and there have been some dark days. I mean, we've only been now, it's a year, and it's been dark, so it's been hard. I mean, fundraising is hard, getting people to really understand we are a nonprofit. We don't make any money off of anything, and everything that we raise, we recycle back to the community. I mean, we don't keep a dime of it. We recycle. We try to find some way to reach people who are in need and who are not able to do for themselves, and to be able to provide that education. So we're just going to keep pressing forward. We're going to continue to sit at the round table, even when the conversations at the round table get hard, because that's why it's called a round table. And they've got hard. I mean, the last conversation we had, I was really hurt by it, because and I have to understand the territory that I'm in. Everything is not going to be a sunshine day. You're going to have to face the hard moments, even when you don't agree. And that's the whole thing about coming together and communication. Because even though you sit at the table, we're all human. We all have our own opinions. Mm-hmm. But the goal is, how can we walk away from here to where we've made a difference or we've made a change? And we got to be able to remove ourselves. And so when I sit at that table, I have to remove myself. Mm-hmm. Even when I do public speaking at organizational events, at law enforcement events, I've had people, I get the most questions, Reverend Smith. We've been on panels, and I get slummed with questions once people realize what happened to my son. And the mere fact that I'm at a law enforcement event and my son was killed by law enforcement. So everything, even in that moment, I remember I tell myself, you represent your son. Mm-hmm. Because see, people only know my son for what they saw from the media. Mm-hmm. You get to experience my son through me.
Right.
And I'm not going to lie for him, and I'm not going to lie on him. Right. And so I'm there not to say, hey, this is a constant reminder in a negative light. I'm there to say my son was a positive light, and his death mm-hmm. has to have something great that comes from it, because everything that God allows is good, and is very good.
I'm so thankful to hear about your faith, how your faith has stayed intact. But were there ever moments when your faith when it wavered, when you said, God, really?
Oh my God. Yes, I would say, God, I thought you said you loved me. I mean, even on the day of his death, I told you, I asked him this because the God I serve, he wouldn't do this. But I had to, it always goes back to your foundation, right? God has no respect of person. You know what I'm saying? Bray, this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with my mission, my goal, and what I have instilled in you because I knew you when you was in your mother's womb.
Yeah.
So that journey that I have set for you, it was already. And I was bringing you through these things to build you up to where you can get to a place where someone says to you, well, you don't look like a mother that lost a child.
Mm.
And I said, what does that look like?
Mm.
Because see, what covers me is grace.
Mm-hmm.
And what covers me is favor. And I have been wrapped in that. So it's not for you to see. See, God sees my brokenness.
Yes.
And so when I go and I stand at a podium, I take a moment to pray and I let people know I'm praying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know this is not a religious setting, but I got to give thanks to God because without him, I am nothing. And if it had not been for him, I would have been in somebody's mental institution.
Yes.
Because there were days, like you said, faith was wavered when I didn't want to wake up. I couldn't get up. I felt like I'm weighing 150 pounds and I felt like a 400-pound woman that couldn't get out of bed. And I said, God, why are you making me suffer? But see, that's what the enemy does. He tries to convince you that these things are of God's doing. No, they're not of God's doing because Satan had to get permission from God to go and touch my life and to touch my son's life. And so if God allowed it, that's how I know that glory be to him and that great things are going to come from this. And I tell you, I call this the rebirth. He's rebirthing me, because there were some moments too, God said, you were arrogant. You thought for a while that you got through all of these things by yourself. And people were saying to me, Reverend Smith, oh, your son's so spoiled, you this. And they didn't realize, and I didn't either till after his death, that God had given him to me in order to get me here. So his journey was only for those 27 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was only for those 27 years. And God will give you something, but we cannot be so caught up on the gift that we forget to give glory to the gift giver. Because God is a jealous God. Mm-hmm. And he said, the Lord, so that he give it, he will take it away.
Yeah.
So I've learned, trust me, I have crawled. I have been in the valley. I have stood. He has had me on the mountain. He's put me back in the valley. He has birthed wind into bones, and I love God.
Amen. Amen.
I mean, I love him because he loved me first.
So tell my audience how they can connect with you.
You can connect with me. You can go to our website just to learn a little bit more about us. It's www.findingans.com, and that's FINDINGSA. I'm sorry, because it's confusing. www.findingans. That's A as in Adam, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam.com. Or you can email us at info@findingans.com. And I will make sure we respond and answer any questions. If you want to be volunteers, if there are opportunities for partnerships, donations, all of that can come by way. And we're definitely looking forward to the next journey, the next steps of this, building partnerships and relationships. And we're not just asking for people to partner with us or volunteer with us. We will volunteer with you. So we'll be more than happy to, if there's ever a time that our services are needed. We do have a behavior health coach as well as a licensed professional counselor that's volunteered with us. And I can't leave here without talking about my most recent program. We won a grant, and the grant, yes, and the grant is, we actually kicked off a program for youth between the ages of 4 and 18 that live in the DeKalb County, Georgia area, who have been exposed to violence or at risk for violence, whether it's sexual, domestic, whatever. And we provide counseling to those kids. We also have a social worker that interacts with those children and serves as a liaison between the kids and the therapist, as well as we pay for them to receive martial arts, because martial arts, we know, is really good for helping with discipline and all those things. So it's a 3-pronged project, and it's called Faith Kicks. So that's the name of the program. It's Faith Kicks. We currently have 1 slot open right now. We've had the program for 3 kids, and we haven't been able to maintain consistency with the 3rd, so this is available. It's a 9-month program. It kicked off in October, but what we're doing is, as kids come in, we're running the full 9 months based on the day that they start, just to ensure that they get the full advantages. So that's 22 interactions with the licensed professional therapist, 36 interactions with the case manager, and 108 martial arts classes that Faith pays for.
Wow. I don't think you can ask for any more than that. That is an excellent and an awesome program. We are just so thankful for how God is moving in your life, that He brought you through all the storms of life. And as you said, as each storm was preparing you for where you are today, and able to stand and to be a voice for your son and to bring forth change through His name. And so we are thankful for that. We're thankful that we had the opportunity today for my sister in Christ, Gebray, to come on and to share with my audience, generationally speaking, her journey. And have not our hearts been lifted? And it opens the conversation for mental health. We have to have these conversations in our families, and we have to acknowledge that there are issues and not just sweep them under the rug or just say, oh, they always act like that. No, there's a problem, and we have to get to the genesis of the problem and find out how we can go about helping a person, or at least trying to get them the assistance that they need. I'm just so thankful she brought up to us the need for us to get involved in our community with our police officers, that we don't have to have an adversarial relationship, that we can start to create some great relationships between community and the police, so that we can change the dynamics of our conversation, the dynamics of our interaction, not just for you, but for the young person next door to you or 2 doors down, so we can change that interaction and change the communities in which we live. Well, I just thank you, Gebray. To my audience, I always say, continue to be inspired.